April 10th, 1912, Southampton, England. The RMS Titanic is about to depart on its maiden voyage. The world's largest ship, the most luxurious, unsinkable, they say. Passengers board with dreams of a new life in America. The crew prepares for the journey. Photographers capture the moment. This is history in the making. If you are watching this, please subscribe. This is a special episode for the anniversary of the Titanic disaster. What you are about to hear is not the story you learned in school. But deep inside the ship, hidden from passengers, from cameras, from the world, there is a problem. Boiler Room 6, coal bunker number 10. A fire is burning. It has been burning for days, maybe weeks. The crew knows, the engineers know, the captain knows, and the ship is sailing anyway. The Titanic was not just a ship against the ice, it was a ship against itself. Coal bunker fires were not uncommon in the early 1900s. Hundreds of tons of coal stored in confined spaces. Sometimes, deep inside the pile, spontaneous combustion would occur. Coal would smolder, heat would build. If not controlled, the fire could spread, could consume the ship from the inside. When workers discovered the fire in Titanic's coal bunker before it left Belfast, they reported it. White Star Line faced a choice: delay the maiden voyage, extinguish the fire properly, inspect the damage, or sail on schedule and deal with it quietly at sea. Delaying meant lost money, disappointed investors, bad publicity. The Titanic was the pride of the White Star Line. The maiden voyage was a spectacle. Tickets had been sold. The world was watching. So they chose to sail. The crew was ordered to shovel coal from the burning bunker into the furnaces as quickly as possible, burn through it, use it up, remove the fuel feeding the fire. But this was not a small fire. The heat was extreme, over 1,000 degrees Celsius. For days, the fire burned against the steel hull. And here is the detail that changes everything. Boiler Room 6, where the fire raged, was directly behind the section of hull that would later collide with the iceberg. The fire was not just burning coal, it was heating the steel, weakening it, making it brittle. Steel loses its strength when subjected to sustained high heat. It becomes less able to absorb impact, more likely to fracture instead of bend. The Titanic's hull in that critical section was compromised before the ship ever reached open water. Modern analysis of photographs taken before departure shows a large dark streak on the hull, right where the fire burned inside. Investigators believe this discoloration is evidence of heat damage. The steel was weakened, the structure was compromised, and no one stopped the voyage. So when the Titanic struck the iceberg on the night of April 14th, the collision occurred at the worst possible location. The iceberg hit the weakened section. Steel that should have dented, instead shattered. The impact opened a series of fractures along the hull. 6 compartments flooded. The ship was doomed. Would the Titanic have survived if the hull had been at full strength? Experts believe the damage would have been less catastrophic. The ship might have stayed afloat long enough for rescue. The fire may have been the difference between survival and tragedy. But White Star Line never admitted this. After the disaster, inquiries focused on the iceberg, the speed, the lifeboats. The coal bunker fire was mentioned briefly, then dismissed as irrelevant. It was easier to blame an iceberg in the dark than to admit the ship sailed with a fatal structural flaw. This is the pattern. Corporate pressure, schedules over safety. The show must go on. The Titanic could not be delayed. Reputation was at stake. So the fire was managed quietly, hidden, ignored. And when 1,500 people died, the company pointed at the iceberg and called it an act of God. But it was not an act of God. It was an act of negligence. The enemy was not just the ice. The enemy was inside the ship, and it had been there all along.
April 14th,
1912. 11:40 p.m. The Titanic strikes the iceberg. The hull is breached. Water floods the forward compartments. Within minutes, it is clear. The ship is sinking. There are not enough lifeboats. Panic spreads. The wireless operators begin sending distress calls. SOS, CQD, we are sinking, come at once. And then the crew does something desperate. They begin firing distress rockets. 8 of them shot into the night sky, bright white bursts of light. The universal signal, we need help. We are dying. 10 miles away, a ship sees them. The SS Californian, a cargo vessel, stopped for the night, surrounded by ice. The crew is awake, officers on watch. They see a large passenger liner in the distance. They see the rockets, bright, unmistakable, and they do nothing. This is the moment that defines betrayal. Not an enemy attacking, not a stranger indifferent, but someone close enough to help, who sees, who knows, and chooses to do nothing. The Californian's radio operator, Cyril Evans, had gone to bed at 11:30 p.m., 10 minutes before the Titanic hit the iceberg. Earlier that evening, he had tried to warn the Titanic about the ice. The Titanic's operator, overwhelmed with passenger messages, had cut him off. Shut up, I am busy." So Evans turned off the radio and went to sleep. He never heard the distress calls. The SOS went out into the void. The Titanic was screaming for help, and the Californian's radio was silent. But the crew on deck saw the rockets. Second Officer Herbert Stone was on watch. He saw the lights of a large passenger ship. He saw rockets being fired, one, then another, then another. He knew what distress rockets looked like. He reported it to Captain Stanley Lord. Captain Lord was resting in the chart room. Stone told him about the rockets. Lord asked if they were company signals, private rockets used for communication between ships of the same line. Stone said he was not sure. Lord told him to try signaling with a Morse lamp, to keep watching, and then Lord went back to rest. Stone tried. He flashed the signal lamp at the distant ship. No response. He saw more rockets. He counted them. 5, 6, 7, 8, all white, the standard distress signal. He reported again to Captain Lord. "More rockets, sir, all white." Lord asked again, "Are they private signals?" Stone did not know. He kept watching. The ship in the distance seemed to be moving strangely, listing, sinking lower in the water. But Stone thought it was just sailing away, disappearing over the horizon. Captain Lord told Stone to keep trying the signal lamp, and then Lord went back to sleep. For over an hour, Stone watched the ship, watched it slowly disappear, watched the lights go out. He assumed it had sailed away. He did not know he was watching 1,500 people die. Meanwhile, on the Titanic, the horror was unfolding. Lifeboats launched half empty because there were not enough trained crew to fill them. Passengers jumped into the freezing water. Families were torn apart. Children screamed. The ship's band played to keep people calm. And in the distance, survivors in lifeboats could see the lights of another ship. Close, so close. They thought they were saved. They rowed toward the lights, but the ship did not move, did not respond, just sat there, watching. The Carpathia, 58 miles away, received the distress call. Captain Arthur Rostron immediately turned his ship around and raced toward the Titanic at full speed. It took nearly 4 hours. By the time the Carpathia arrived, the Titanic was gone. Most of the people in the water had frozen to death. The Californian was 10 miles away. If Captain Lord had woken his radio operator, he would have heard the distress calls. If he had investigated the rockets, he could have reached the Titanic in less than an hour. He could have saved hundreds, maybe over 1,000. The Californians had the capacity, it had the time. It chose not to act. When morning came and the truth emerged, Captain Stanley Lord tried to defend himself. He claimed the ship they saw was not the Titanic, that it was another vessel, that the rockets were not distress signals, that the ice made it impossible to move. The evidence destroyed him. Survivors testified they saw a ship nearby. The Californian's position matched, the timeline matched, the rockets were seen. Captain Lord's own officers testified against him. In the British inquiry, the conclusion was damning. The Californian could have saved many lives. It did not. Captain Lord spent the rest of his life trying to clear his name. He argued, he protested, he wrote letters. In 1992, 80 years after the disaster, the British government reviewed the case again. Their conclusion: Captain Lord failed in his duty. This is not just a story about one negligent captain. It is a story about the bystander effect on a catastrophic scale. Help was within reach, the distress was visible, and the response was indifference. The Californian represents something we see again and again: the ship nearby that does not help, the ally that turns away, the government that ignores the distress call, resources within reach, lives that could be saved, but bureaucracy, apathy, or cowardice prevent action. The SS Californian was close enough to see the Titanic die, and it did nothing. That is not tragedy. That is betrayal. April 15th, 1912, 4 a.m. The Carpathia arrives. Lifeboats scattered across the freezing Atlantic. 712 survivors. Shivering, in shock. Some are silent, some are hysterical. Many have watched family members drown, heard the screams of 1,500 people freezing to death. Surviving was only the beginning of the nightmare. When the Carpathia docked in New York on April 18th, the world was waiting. Reporters, photographers, thousands of people. The survivors were thrust into the spotlight, asked to recount the horror, to describe the screams, the cold, the dead. And then the cameras left, and the survivors were left with their trauma, alone. There was a third-class woman. She survived with her 2 young children. Her husband went down with the ship. She arrived in New York with nothing. No money, no home, no family. White Star Line offered her $50 compensation. For first-class widows, the payout was thousands. For her, $50. She worked multiple jobs, raised her children in poverty. She never remarried, never spoke about the Titanic. Her children said she would wake up screaming at night for the rest of her life. There was a man from Asia, first-class passenger. He got into a lifeboat. When he returned to his country, he was branded a coward. Newspapers vilified him. He lost his job, his reputation, his honor. He was called a disgrace for surviving while others died. He lived in shame until his death. His family spent decades trying to restore his name. There was a baker. He survived by staying in the water for hours. He drank whiskey from the ship's stores before going in. The alcohol dilated his blood vessels, which kept him warmer longer. He treaded water, waited. Eventually, he was pulled into a lifeboat, nearly frozen but alive. After the disaster, he continued working. He never talked about it. When asked, he would only say he was lucky. He died in 1956. He never forgot the cold. There was a woman who survived 3 shipwrecks. She worked as a stewardess. First, she was on the Olympic when it collided with a warship. She survived. Then the Titanic. She got into a lifeboat, survived again. Then the Britannic, the 3rd sister ship, hit a mine and sank. She jumped out a window into the ocean, was nearly killed by the propeller. Survived. 3 disasters. She lived to 83. They called her the unsinkable stewardess, but her life was defined by death. There were children, orphaned, traumatized. One child, only 2 years old when the Titanic sank, grew up with night terrors. She could not sleep in the dark. As an adult, she became a maritime safety advocate. She testified before governments, gave speeches, fought for regulations. She said her mission was to ensure no one else experienced what she had. She lived to 91. She slept with the lights on until the day she died. The survivors carried the weight forever. Some found purpose, some found only pain. Many never spoke about it, tried to forget, but the memory stayed. The sound of the screams, the cold, the sight of bodies in the water. And the class divide continued. First-class survivors received significant compensation. Second class received less. Third class received almost nothing. Wealthy survivors rebuilt their lives quickly. Poor survivors struggled for decades. White Star Line fought liability, argued the disaster was an act of God, offered minimal payouts. Survivors had to sue. Legal battles dragged on for years. Many gave up, accepted pennies, moved on. The crew suffered too. Surviving crew members were fired the moment the Titanic sank. White Star stopped paying wages. They were unemployed, stranded in New York. Some made it back to England, some stayed. Many never found work again. Who hires crew from the ship that sank? The last survivor died in 2009. She had been an infant. She had no memory of the disaster, but she spent her entire life answering questions, giving interviews, preserving the memory. She said she felt a responsibility to those who did not survive. Surviving the Titanic was not a gift. For many, it was a curse. They lived with guilt, with nightmares, with the knowledge that they were alive because someone else was not. The Titanic did not just kill 1,500 people, it scarred 712 others for life.
The Titanic rests 3,800 meters below the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, in darkness, in silence, in freezing water. It has been there for over a century. When the wreck was discovered in 1985, the world saw the ship again, broken in two, the bow upright, buried in the seafloor, the stern shattered, unrecognizable, rust, decay, a graveyard. But the Titanic is not just resting, it is disappearing. A species of bacteria called Holomonas titanicae is consuming the wreck. It feeds on the iron, creates rusticles, rust formations that hang like icicles from the structure. Every year, the ship deteriorates further. The grand staircase is gone, the funnels collapsed, the hull is weakening. Scientists estimate that within 40 years, the Titanic will be unrecognizable. Within a century, it may be completely dissolved, reduced to a pile of rust on the ocean floor. The physical remnant of the disaster, the last tangible connection to 1912, is being erased by nature. The Titanic is vanishing. The steel that was supposed to be unsinkable is being consumed by microorganisms. The ship that represented human ambition, luxury, progress, is turning to dust. There's something poetic about this. The negligence that built the disaster is being undone by time. The fire that weakened the hull, the captain who ignored the rockets, the company that prioritized profit over safety, all of it buried, forgotten, dissolved. But the lessons remain. The Titanic is a warning that we refuse to heed. We still ignore internal fires, experts telling us something is wrong, whistleblowers raising alarms, scientists warning of danger. We silence them, dismiss them, because acknowledging the problem is inconvenient, expensive, bad for business. We still see distress signals and do nothing. Ships nearby, allies within reach, resources available, but politics, bureaucracy, apathy prevent action. We watch the rockets in the sky, we see the crisis, and we choose to look away. The Titanic was not just a shipwreck, it was a demonstration of human failure. The failure to listen, the failure to act, the failure to prioritize lives over profit. And 112 years later, we are still failing. The ship is disappearing, but the pattern remains. We build systems we claim are unsinkable. We ignore warnings. We cut corners. We prioritize schedules and profits. And when disaster strikes, we blame the iceberg, the act of God, the unforeseeable tragedy. But it is never unforeseeable. The warnings were always there. The fire was always burning. The distress signals were always visible. We just chose not to see. The Titanic rests in darkness, a monument to what happens when ambition ignores reality, when pride overrides caution, when those who can help choose not to. The steel is fading, the structure is collapsing. Soon the physical ship will be gone, but the lesson is eternal. The Titanic is disappearing, but its message remains. History repeats, not because we forget, but because we ignore the same warnings, the same fires, the same distress signals, and we wonder why the ship keeps sinking. The Titanic is summing, but its lessons are eternal. History repeats because we ignore the same signs. Share this with someone who refuses to look away. I am If History Repeats, and history always has something to say.